After my 8-year-old daughter got carsick, my parents kicked her out of the car and abandoned her on an empty road because she was ruining the fun for the other grandchildren. I didn't shout. I took action. 2 hours later, their lives started falling apart. The phone rang in the middle of my workday. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. She usually calls to ask about passwords she's forgotten or to tell me about another fundraiser she wants me to contribute to, but I picked up. Her voice was brisk, almost cheerful. "Denise, you'll need to come and collect Ruby." She got sick in the car. We've left her by a safe spot on the road. It's close, just 15 minutes from you, I think. I froze. "I'm sorry, what?" "She was ill," Mom said, like she was reporting the weather. "We couldn't risk the other kids catching it. And we've got a flight. We couldn't wait. You can be there quickly." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "You left my daughter on the road?" "She's fine," Dad chimed in from the background, his voice muffled but firm. "Don't overreact." "We dropped her where there are people around. Overreact." "Right. Because when your 8-year-old vomits in the car, the reasonable response is to dump her on the roadside like unwanted luggage. Spoiler, there weren't any people. Not that it would make it better. They texted me a pin drop and hung up, just like that. I grabbed my keys and ran. Traffic crawled. My hands clenched the wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. My parents' words kept circling in my head. "She's fine. Don't overreact." They had always been good at that, making cruelty sound practical. When I pulled up to the spot, my heart lodged in my throat. There she was, my little girl, standing alone, clutching her backpack to her chest like a shield, eyes red from crying. The road was empty, the air heavy, and the space around her felt like a punishment. She looked so small against the bleak stretch of asphalt. The moment she saw me, her face crumpled. She ran to the car, stumbling, and collapsed into my arms. "Mom!" Her whole body shook. I held her as tightly as I could. "I'm here." "You're safe now." The tears came in waves. Her words tangled with hiccups. "They said I couldn't come. They said I was too sick. But I wasn't. She swallowed hard. "I just got dizzy in the car." I leaned back to look at her. Her cheeks were streaked, her hands trembling. "You got carsick?" She nodded, her lip quivering. "That's all." So there it was. Not the flu. Not a stomach bug. Not anything contagious or serious. Carsick. The thing that happens to kids sometimes. The thing you comfort them through, hand them water, roll the window down, promise them ice cream later. And for that, my parents had decided to abandon her. I buckled her in beside me, started the car, and forced my voice steady. "Listen to me, Ruby. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. This is not your fault." She sniffled, staring at her hands. "They said I ruined everything." A dry laugh escaped me, bitter and sharp. "Sweetheart, the only thing ruined here is their credibility as grandparents." She managed a shaky smile at that, but the tears didn't stop. I drove us home, every mile stretching the anger tighter inside me. My parents thought they'd been clever. They thought they'd dressed up cruelty as logic. She was sick. We had to think of the others. We had a flight to catch. But all I could see was my daughter's face, pale and streaked with tears, standing alone on that empty road. At home, I tucked Ruby onto the couch with a blanket and a cup of water. She clung to me like she was afraid I'd disappear too. I stroked her hair, my voice calm for her sake. "You're safe. I've got you, and I promise you'll never go through that again." Inside, my thoughts burned. They thought I'd swallow it, that I'd let it slide because they wrapped it up in excuses, that I'd keep paying, keep contributing, keep enabling them. They had no idea who they were dealing with, because the moment I pulled Ruby into my arms on that roadside, something shifted. This wasn't just another insult, another manipulation, another, oops, we didn't mean it that way. This was the line, and they had crossed it. I sat beside my daughter as her breathing finally evened out, her small hand gripping mine. She whispered, "Are you mad at me?" My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. I'm mad at them, and they're about to regret it." She drifted into sleep, her chest rising and falling softly, while I stared at the ceiling, every nerve in my body alive with resolve. They thought abandoning Ruby was practical. I knew it was unforgivable. And soon, their lives would start to unravel. If you want to understand why I snapped, you need the whole story. This didn't come out of nowhere. My parents didn't suddenly turn into people who thought dumping an 8-year-old by the side of the road was reasonable. No. That kind of thinking has roots, and I've been tripping over those roots my entire life. I grew up the afterthought. My brother, 2 years older, was the favorite. Not in a way you could point to in court, not in a way that would make for a neat headline. It was quieter than that, subtler, the kind of favoritism you can almost convince yourself you imagined. Almost. When I was 11, they booked a family holiday to Florida. Disney, beaches, the works. The same week I had my regional school competition. I'd told them about it months in advance, circled the date on the calendar. They went anyway. "Oh no," Mom said later, tilting her head in mock concern. "You must have written it down wrong." I hadn't. They came home with bags of souvenirs, endless stories, and this sing-song refrain. "What a shame you weren't there." Like they'd tripped and accidentally bought tickets, boarded a plane, and stayed gone for 2 weeks. That refrain followed me for years. Every time something was planned when I couldn't go, "What a shame you weren't there," delivered with a smile, dripping with false innocence. I learned early. My presence was optional. My absence was convenient. Fast forward. I decided if I couldn't be wanted, I'd at least be indispensable. I threw myself into school, then into work, clawing for independence. I landed in fintech. Glamorous only if you find spreadsheets glamorous, but stable. And yes, it pays well. My husband does okay too. Together, we're comfortable. And in my family, comfortable is code for you get the biggest bill. We have this so-called system. Everyone contributes what they can. Nice on paper. In practice, it means if you earn less, you chip in less, and if you earn more, you shoulder more, which would be fine, if more didn't eventually mean everything. Family vacations? I'd end up paying $1,500 to $2,000, while others tossed in $200, maybe $500 if they were feeling generous. The emergency fund? A noble idea, supposedly for true crises. I put in $600 a month. My brother, the golden child, about $150. Guess whose money covered Mom and Dad's emergency mortgage shortfall last spring? Or their car insurance? Or Dad's new glasses? Spoiler, not him. And sometimes I wouldn't even know until the money was gone. One text in the group chat. We had to use the fund. Hope that's okay. As if I had a choice. It wasn't just money. I co-signed their mortgage, co-signed their car lease, supposedly just helping them get a better rate. But we all knew what it meant. If they slipped, the bank would come for me. They'd wrapped chains around my credit score and called it family duty. And yet, I went along with it. Why? Because I wanted Ruby to have what I never had. Cousins, grandparents, family vacations, memories that didn't start with, "What a shame you weren't there." So I bought peace. I bought belonging for my daughter, even if I never got it myself. Which brings me to the trip. This wasn't just any trip. It was Orlando. Roller coasters, parades, the kind of commercials that make kids bounce on the couch chanting, When can we go? When can we go? Ruby had been begging for over a year. Every time she saw her cousins, she asked, "Are we going yet?" When the invitation came, timed, of course, for one of my busiest weeks at work, I almost said no. The pattern was too familiar. But Ruby's face when she heard the destination, she lit up like Christmas morning. So I caved. I thought, they're her grandparents. They'll take care of her. What could go wrong? My husband couldn't step in. Not just because of work, but because the idea of spending a week with my family without me makes him break out in hives. So Ruby went without us, clutching her new backpack, grinning from ear to ear. And me? I footed the bill. $850 for Ruby's airfare, hotel share, and park ticket. Another $1,200 toward group costs, because, of course, I make more. $2,050 in total. More than double what anyone else gave. I told myself it was worth it. This was Ruby's chance to have the trip she'd been dreaming about. But deep down, I knew I was repeating history. I'd paid for the privilege of being excluded. Looking back, I can't believe how naive I was. I thought throwing money at them would buy safety, inclusion, love. Instead, it bought my daughter a place on the side of an empty road, crying into her backpack while her grandparents called it practical. They didn't know it yet, but the cracks in their perfect little world had already begun. Ruby asked me again the next night. She was curled up on the couch with her sketchbook, doodling half-heartedly, her lines shaky. She didn't look up when she whispered it. "Mom, did I really ruin it for everyone?" It was the second time. She'd already asked once, and I'd told her no, it wasn't her fault. But here it was again. The same question, raw and jagged. That's how deep they'd cut her. I put the sketchbook aside and crouched in front of her. "Sweetheart," I said, steady, "you didn't ruin anything." They did, and they're going to regret it. Her eyes filled, but she blinked hard and nodded. And for the first time since that roadside, I felt something hard and certain lock into place inside me. They thought I'd swallow it. They thought I'd stay quiet, keep paying, keep enabling. No! This ends now. The first thing I did was sit down and cut every single tie. Click. Cancel recurring transfer to the emergency fund. Goodbye $600 a month. Then the group trip contributions, always padded with my extra. Canceled. Mortgage. Car lease. The noose they'd tied around my neck years ago, dressed up as helping us get a better rate. I called the bank, then the lease company. Calm voice, steady tone. Told them I wanted out, that I would no longer guarantee my parents' debts. Of course, they didn't rip up the contracts that second. That's not how it works. But the accounts went under review, and I knew what that meant. Their sweet little fixed-rate deals wouldn't last. Variable rates would come. Higher payments, more pressure. Not today, but soon. And for once, the squeeze would be on them, not me. Then I sent my parents a message. I pulled out the receipts. $850 for Ruby's airfare, hotel share, and park ticket. Another $1,200 for group costs I'd covered because apparently I make more. $2,050 in total. Short to the point, you left Ruby on the side of the road. Return the money I paid for this trip. No flourish, no exclamation points. Just facts. The phone rang 10 minutes later. Mom's voice was sharp, brittle. "How dare you demand this?" "She's your daughter. You expect us to pay for her?" I almost laughed. "You mean the daughter you abandoned?" "Yes. I expect repayment." Dad grabbed the phone, his anger a blunt instrument. "She was sick!" "She couldn't go, so why should we pay? You're her mother. You make more money than all of us, and now you want us to pay for your child? What kind of family does that?" There it was. The fury. Not about abandoning Ruby, but about me daring to send them a bill. There it was, the fury. Not about abandoning Ruby, but about me daring to send them a bill. You left her alone, I said flatly. This isn't optional. You can't just walk away like this, Mom snapped. I let out a dry laugh. Who says I haven't already? That stopped them cold. Dad's voice sharpened. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer, just let the silence breathe. And then the panic started to creep in. Dad's tone shifted, more uncertain. What about the emergency fund? What about it? I said. You'll still put money in, right? No! A beat of silence. Then Mom's voice, higher now, brittle. And the trips? You're still covering the trips? You can't just stop paying for family trips. Watch me. Another pause. I could almost hear them trying to catch up. Dad again, quieter, almost stumbling. The cosigns. You didn't actually touch those, did you? I made some calls. Silence. Heavy, stunned silence. That's when the turn came. You're ungrateful, Dad shouted, desperate now. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You owe us the guilt card. Their ace of spades. I almost smiled. I've been paying that so-called debt my entire adulthood. Thousands into your trips. Hundreds every month into your fund. I co-signed your house. Your car. I was your safety net. I let the words hang. Let them sink in. And I just cut the cord. Nothing. For once in my life, they had no words. When I set the phone down, my hands weren't trembling. My chest wasn't tight. It felt like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying since childhood, one I never should have been handed in the first place. The room was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint scratch of Ruby's pencil from the couch. She looked up when I walked back in, her eyes wide. Was that them? She asked. Yeah, I said. They're not happy. Her little shoulders curled inward. Are they still mad at me? I crouched until we were eye to eye. No, I said, calm and certain. They're mad at me. And that's exactly how it should be. Something in her face softened. A tiny smile, fragile but real, tugged at the corner of her mouth. I knew the storm hadn't passed. It had just shifted direction. They were angry now, but soon they'd be desperate. They'd fight. They always did. I thought the silence after our last call would last a while. I thought maybe they'd be too stunned to lash out again, but my parents don't do silence. They do theater, and this time, their stage was the church bulletin board, the family group chat, and the neighborhood Facebook group. The headline of their performance? Poor us. The first message I saw was in the family chat. Our daughter Denise is demanding we pay her back over $2,000 for Ruby's trip. Ruby got sick, she couldn't go, and now Denise expects us to cover the entire cost. She makes far more money than we do, but now she's refusing to contribute to the family emergency fund or family expenses. Please pray she comes back to her senses. Attached, a cropped screenshot of my message. Just the line where I asked them to return the money. No mention of Ruby being left on a roadside. The comments rolled in fast. A cousin. $2,000? Seriously, Denise? An aunt. You always were dramatic. How can you treat your parents this way? Even a church friend. We'll pray for reconciliation. I stared at the screen, laughter bubbling up, sharp and bitter. Only my parents could abandon a child on an empty road and still find a way to paint me as the monster. I typed my reply slowly, carefully. Ruby wasn't sick. She was carsick. They left her on an empty road, sent me a pin, and drove away. She waited 20 minutes alone until I picked her up. No emotion, no exclamation marks, just facts. And still, the chat split down the middle. Some, "This is awful, Denise. I believe you." Others, "That doesn't sound like your parents. Why would they do that?" The doubt sat heavy, because that's the thing about my parents. They were masters at dressing cruelty up as practicality. They'd been doing it my whole life. Then came the crack in their performance. Dad, in all his self-righteous wisdom, couldn't resist. He hammered out a reply, probably thinking he was winning points. Any rational person would have done it. We had a flight to catch. She was sick. We couldn't risk the other children. We had no choice but to do what we did. I read it twice. 3 times. My stomach flipped. Not with fear, but with satisfaction. Because there it was. In writing. Their confession, dressed up as logic. And the tide turned. The chat exploded. "You left her? You actually admitted it? Carsick isn't contagious. How could you?" Screenshots flew, neighbors reposted. Even people outside the family thread saw it before my parents realized their mistake and deleted the message. Too late. The internet never forgets. By Sunday, the whispers reached church. I didn't go. I never do. But friends sent me texts. "Your mom tried to give a testimony, but they told her it wasn't appropriate." People wouldn't even shake their hands. They walked out before the service ended. All those years they'd spent polishing their image as pillars of the community, undone by one sentence. Any rational person would have done it. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then came stunt number 2. A screenshot appeared in the family chat. $2,050 transferred back to me. Caption: "Even though we already paid for Ruby's place, Denise demanded repayment." Here it is. Proof we paid. For a moment, it worked. An uncle wrote, "Well, at least they repaid you. That shows good faith." A cousin chimed in, "This proves they're trying, Denise." Maybe you should let it go now. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. So I pulled out my own stack of receipts. Emergency fund, $600 every month, 5 years. Family trips, $1,500 to $2,000 each time, multiple times. Mortgage and car lease cosigns. Other little extras that were never little. Total, over $40,000 in the last 5 years. I posted the photo, attached a simple caption. "This isn't about one trip. This is about a lifetime of me carrying them." And then I closed my phone. I posted it. And then I closed my phone. Not to watch the fireworks. I didn't need to. The truth doesn't scream. It just waits. And then it travels. Little pieces started reaching me. A friend of a friend forwarded a screenshot. "They deleted this, but everyone saw it." Someone else mentioned they'd tried to speak at church, but the room went quiet. A cousin's neighbor wrote me privately, "People aren't looking at them the same anymore." I didn't have to chase it down. The story found me anyway. That's the thing about a reputation. It takes decades to polish and only minutes to crack. And this time, they were the ones holding the hammer. 6 months later, I didn't need to ask for updates. They came to me anyway. First, the finances. A cousin mentioned they'd lost their fixed rate. The mortgage spiked, the car payment doubled, and without my monthly contributions, the math just didn't work. Bills piled. They panicked. Then came the car, repossessed in broad daylight. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, and by the next morning, everyone in town knew. After that came the house. Another relative sent me a photo, a for sale sign hammered into their perfect lawn. They sold quickly, for less than they wanted. Packed boxes, a quiet move, no farewells. And socially, they didn't need to be banned. They were simply erased. Invitations stopped coming. Dinners, birthdays, church gatherings, gone. The people they once leaned on crossed the street instead of saying hello. Piece by piece, they became ghosts in their own town. Meanwhile, Ruby was thriving. We finally booked the trip she'd begged for. Orlando, this time with me and my husband by her side. She screamed with joy when we pulled up, bouncing in her seat. Watching her laugh as we walked through the gates, I thought, every dollar I once wasted on them now builds her joy instead. Her laughter was the sound of freedom, but the real surprise came later. I'd heard whispers early on, relatives hinting that my parents were leaning harder on my brother now. With me gone, they assumed he'd step in. They expected him to open his wallet, rescue them, carry the load. But when the requests started, he didn't pay. And when the gossip spread, he didn't defend them. Because money wasn't the only problem anymore. They weren't just struggling, they were outcasts. And he wasn't about to tie himself to sinking ships. So the golden child, the son they built their whole world around, quietly cut the cord too. No support, no defense, no visits, nothing. It wasn't loyalty that guided him. It was self-preservation. And just like that, the parents who once bragged about their perfect son were left with no one. Not their church, not their friends, not even him. Just silence. So what do you think? Did I go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. During our family vacation, my 14-year-old daughter collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. My parents and my sister posted, "Finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen." I didn't shout. I took action. When they returned home, they found this on their kitchen table and started screaming. Sounds like the setup for a bad soap opera, right? Unfortunately, it was just another Tuesday with my family. If you've ever wondered what it's like to go on holiday with people who treat cruelty like a team sport, buckle up. We do these family trips every year. Tradition, my parents call it. Personally, I call it masochism, but my daughter was excited about this one. It was somewhere she'd been begging to go for ages. She was practically counting down the days, and even though I dreaded the circus, I gave in. That's the thing about being a single mom. Sometimes you put yourself in the lion's den just to give your kid a happy memory. So there we were. Me, my daughter, my parents, my sister, her husband, and their 2 kids. Sounds wholesome. But wholesome ends at the brochure. Behind the smiles, it's every man for himself, with my parents acting like referees who've already picked their favorite team. Spoiler, it's never mine. Day 1, breakfast, and my daughter says her stomach hurts. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet, "Mom, my belly doesn't feel right." Before I can answer, my mother swoops in. "Oh, please, don't start with the drama already. We just got here." My sister snorts. She's probably just trying to get out of walking. Lazy, like always. And the cousins, smelling blood, chime in like a Greek chorus. "Drama queen! Drama queen!" It's like they were waiting for it, honestly. One tiny weakness, and suddenly, it's family game night. I tried to comfort her, but I admit, part of me wanted to believe it was nothing. Easier to shrug it off than start a fight with my parents before noon on day 1. By midday, the pain was worse. She was pale, holding her stomach, walking slowly behind the group. "Don't milk it," my dad barked when she asked to sit down for a minute. "She's always been like this," my mom muttered, making sure I heard. "She'll make a scene out of nothing." My sister rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Meanwhile, my daughter stayed quiet. She hates attention, which is ironic because they all think she lives for it. She tried to keep up, probably desperate not to be mocked again. That broke me a little. Watching her try to minimize her pain so these people wouldn't laugh at her. That's what this family does, turn suffering into entertainment. By dinner, she was barely eating. She sat with tears in her eyes, while everyone else clinked glasses and laughed. My sister leaned into her husband and whispered something, and both their kids snickered at my daughter. I asked what was so funny. They smirked. "Nothing." Right. Nothing. And then it happened. She stood up, maybe to go to the bathroom, and just folded, like a puppet with its strings cut. One moment she was upright, the next she was on the floor, clutching her stomach and gasping in pain. For a split second, the table went quiet. Then my mom broke the silence. "Oh, for heaven's sake!" Like my kid collapsing was just her pulling another stunt. I lost it. I grabbed my daughter, yelled for help, and we got her rushed to the hospital. That night was a blur. White walls, harsh lights, doctors asking questions, nurses moving quickly. My daughter curled on the bed, in agony. Me sitting there, trying not to cry. I didn't know what was happening. Appendicitis, food poisoning, something worse? My brain went to dark places. All I knew was my baby was in pain, and I couldn't fix it. I texted my family to let them know we were at the hospital. No reply. Hours crawled by, test after test. Me pacing, holding her hand, telling her it would be okay, even though I didn't know that. At some point, desperate for distraction, I checked my phone. And that's when I saw it. A photo, posted an hour earlier. My parents, my sister, and the cousins, grinning by the pool, cocktails in hand. The caption, "Finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen." I froze. My daughter was in a hospital bed, crying out in pain, and they were out there celebrating, posting selfies, mocking her, mocking us. I stared at that picture until my hands shook. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to march back to that hotel and drag them all here to see what drama really looked like. But I didn't, because in that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of being dismissed, of being told I was the disappointment, of watching them play favorites and belittle me, and now my daughter. It all came into focus, and I knew. This was it. The line. They'd crossed it, and there was no going back. I sat there, beside my daughter's hospital bed, while the people who should have cared most were clinking glasses without us. And instead of shouting, I made a decision. They weren't going to get away with it. If you want to understand why my parents could sit by a pool and toast cocktails while my daughter was in a hospital bed, you have to rewind. I didn't just happen into a toxic family. I was raised in one like a lab experiment. From day one, it was obvious who the favorite was. My sister. 2 years older, perfect on paper, perfect in their eyes. The golden child who sparkled when she sneezed. And me? I was the control group. The disappointment. They never said those words out loud, "You're the disappointment," but they didn't have to. It was in the way my mother's voice tightened every time I opened my mouth, the way my father sighed when I tried something and didn't excel, the way teachers would compare me to my sister and my parents would just nod like, "Yes, exactly. Why can't she be like that?" Imagine growing up with a mirror that only shows you what you're not. That was my childhood. When I was little, I tried. God, did I try. I studied harder, I dressed neater, I even practiced smiling in the mirror because my sister's smile seemed to get her everything. I thought if I could just mimic it, maybe I'd get a fraction of what she got. Spoiler, I didn't. Instead, the more I tried, the more obvious it became that I wasn't her, and in my family, not her was the same as failure. It's funny, kids believe what you feed them. I grew up swallowing disappointment 3 meals a day until I thought it was part of my DNA. If my parents had handed me a certificate that said certified failure, I would have framed it. By the time I hit my teens, that sense of worthlessness had calcified. So when I fell for a boy who treated me like trash, of course I did. He wasn't good for me, but at least he noticed me. At least when he looked at me, I wasn't invisible. That was enough. Until it wasn't. I got pregnant. Young. Too young for them, even though my sister was the same age when she married her high school sweetheart. The difference? She had a ring. I didn't. When I told my parents, my mother's face looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. My father didn't even look at me, just muttered, "Figures." My sister, queen of empathy, smirked and said, "Well, at least now you've got a purpose." I thought being pregnant might make me important. Instead, it just made me their cautionary tale. The baby's father was a toxic mirror of my parents, manipulative, cruel, impossible to please. I guess we gravitate toward what we know. That lasted about 5 minutes before it imploded, and when he was gone, I was relieved. terrified, but relieved. And for the first time in my life, I felt something like pride. Not in myself, but in her, my daughter. She was tiny and helpless and needed me, and that meant I mattered, even if only to her. Of course, my parents weaponized that too. Single mother. Shameful. She won't amount to anything. My sister looked at me like I was a walking reminder of what not to be. But here's the kicker. The house we lived in, it wasn't theirs. It was my grandmother's. My grandmother was the only person in that family who ever looked at me and saw me. Not the failed copy of my sister. Not the disappointment. Just me. She was older by then, fragile, but sharp. I helped her around the house, took care of her, and she loved my baby with a fierceness I had never seen before. The way she'd cradle her, whisper to her, beam at her like she was sunlight itself. I used to watch them together and feel this ache in my chest, like, so this is what love is supposed to look like. Then my grandmother died, and everything tilted. Everyone assumed the house would go to my mother. After all, she was the daughter. My father used to talk about our home like the deed already had their names on it. My sister started redecorating in her head before the will was even read, but my grandmother wasn't stupid. She saw them, she knew them, and maybe she knew that if she left the house to her daughter, I would never escape the cycle. So she did something my parents never forgave her for. She left the house to my baby. Not me. My baby. In trust, with me as guardian until she came of age. When I first found out, I thought it had to be a mistake. Who leaves property to a toddler? But then I remembered the way my grandmother had looked at my daughter. Like she was worth protecting. Like she deserved better than the circus we lived in. And suddenly, it made perfect sense. My parents? They lost their minds. My mother wailed about betrayal. My father said my grandmother had been confused at the end. My sister whispered about culture and tradition, how the house should naturally pass to the adult daughter, not a child. They stormed around like the victims, while I sat there with a toddler on my lap and a piece of paper in my hands that said, legally, this house wasn't theirs. It was hers, my daughter's. But here's the thing. When you've spent your whole life being told you're worthless, you don't wake up the next morning suddenly full of power. I didn't kick them out. I didn't throw the deed in their faces. I did what I'd always done. I kept my head down. I told myself, it's just a formality. It's still their house. Don't rock the boat. So we stayed. My parents continued to treat it as theirs. They filled the rooms with their rules, their voices, their judgment. I raised my daughter in the same house where I had been raised as a disappointment, hoping maybe things would be different this time. They weren't. Every time my mother scolded me, every time my father sighed, every time my sister visited with her perfect life and her perfect kids, it was the same chorus. Failure, failure, failure. Only now, I had someone watching me absorb it. My daughter. That was the part that kept me up at night. Not my parents' cruelty. I was used to that. But the thought that she might grow up thinking this treatment was normal. That she'd believe, the way I once believed, that she was a burden. And if you've ever wondered why I snapped when I saw that pool selfie, when I saw them mocking her while she was in the hospital, this is why. Because it wasn't just a caption. It was a lifetime of cruelty, now directed at the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered. When the doctor finally came in, I thought my chest might cave in. Appendicitis, he said, flat as a hammer on steel, like he was telling me the time. Good news. It hadn't burst yet. Bad news. They had to operate immediately. And the worst part? I was alone in that room. Alone with my fear, alone with the silence from the people who should have been there. I wanted to text them. Just one line. She needs surgery. She could have died. But I stopped myself, because I already knew how it would play out. At best, my sister would send an eye roll in text form. At worst, they'd laugh about drama queen again. So I didn't call. And they didn't either. Not once. My daughter was being prepped for surgery, and they were still splashing in that damn pool. The operation went smoothly. The surgeon told me she'd recover fine, and I nearly collapsed myself. I sat there by her bed afterward, watching her breathe under the thin hospital blanket, thinking, this is what it means to actually show up for someone. And in the same breath, I thought, my parents never have. Not for me. Not for her. They'd toasted cocktails while I panicked in this chair. That's when it hit me. I had leverage. Real, legal leverage. The trust. The house. The one card my grandmother had pressed into my hand when she died, and I'd been too scared, too conditioned to ever play it. Not anymore. While my daughter slept, I called a lawyer. My voice was steady. Too steady, maybe. He took down the details, and by the time we left the hospital a few days later, the papers were ready. Formal notice. 30 days. I didn't sneak it into a drawer. I didn't send it through the post like a bill. No. I put it right on the kitchen table, dead center. Let it sit there like a live wire. And then I waited. The holiday stretched another week. Every day they posted more. Beaches, dinners, matching grins, family time. Every caption felt like it was aimed at me, at her. I stayed silent. For once, the silence was mine. And then the front door opened. Suitcases dragged across the floor. Laughter echoed. My parents walked in first, tan and smug, with my sister right behind them, her husband and kids trailing along. They froze when they saw me sitting at the table, the letter in front of me. The room went still. My mother reached for it first, scanned the lines, and went red. My father's jaw clenched like stone. My sister's face twisted like she'd swallowed something bitter. Then the screaming began. "This is our house!" my mother shouted, waving the paper. "She was confused when she wrote that will," my father barked. "You know she was old. She didn't know what she was doing." "You can't be serious!" my sister snapped, her voice climbing. "This is family. You don't kick family out." The cousins just stared, wide-eyed, like they'd stumbled into a play they didn't audition for. I didn't move. My friend sat beside me, sipping tea slowly, watching the circus unfold. My mother slammed the letter down again. "Ungrateful!" she spat. "After everything we've done for you, after raising you, you owe us this." I looked at her, calm as ice. "No, I don't. It's my daughter's house. You have 1 month." You'd think I had set the place on fire. My father turned purple. My sister started ranting about culture, tradition, respect. My mother wailed about betrayal. The cousins whispered drama queen again, as if that word could undo ink on paper. I stayed steady. I didn't shout. I didn't budge. "You have 1 month," I repeated. They threw everything at me, pleading, threats, guilt trips. My sister leaned across the table, furious. "Just take it back! Tear it up! You can't really mean this?" "If you care so much," I said, "let them live with you." And that shut her up cold. It went on for hours. Accusations, slammed doors, red faces, tears that looked rehearsed. My friend never left my side. Not once. At one point, my father leaned in, his voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this. You're still the same failure you've always been." I smiled, tired and sharp. "Maybe, but I'm the failure who just gave you 30 days to find a new place to live." That shut him down too. By the end of the night, the noise had burned itself out. My parents retreated to their room, muttering. My sister gathered up her kids and left, fuming. I went upstairs, tucked my daughter into her bed, kissed her forehead. She stirred, murmured my name, and I felt the weight shift. For the first time in years, the power was mine. They thought they owned this house. They thought they owned me. But the notice was on the table, the clock was ticking, and there was no undoing it. And I knew one thing as I turned out the light. They weren't going to take this quietly. Living with my parents after handing them an eviction notice was like sleeping with snakes in the bed and pretending you couldn't hear them hiss. The letter was on the table, the clock was ticking. But they still sat at the kitchen every morning, rattling mugs and slamming drawers as if noise could change the law. The atmosphere was poisonous. My father reading the paper with exaggerated sighs, my mother whispering ungrateful, just loud enough for me to hear. The air in that house had weight to it, pressing down on me and my daughter until even breathing felt like defiance. And my daughter, still sore from surgery, had to walk past their stairs on her way to the bathroom. 14 years old and recovering from appendicitis, but they looked at her like she'd ruined their lives. Then came the posts. I didn't see them first. My cousin sent me screenshots. My parents, smiling sadly beside staged boxes by the door. Caption: thrown out by our own daughter, betrayed, made homeless. Homeless. They were sitting in my kitchen when that went live. More posts followed. My father perched on the stairs looking tragic. My mother clutching a photo album like a widow in a soap opera. The captions wrote themselves, "We gave her everything. She gave us nothing." And the comments rolled in. Aunts, uncles, extended family all piling on. How could she? Shameful. Doesn't she know what family means? Family. Right. The same family that had called my kid a drama queen while she writhed in pain. I didn't answer. Not yet. Then my sister came. She didn't storm in this time. She knocked, but the look on her face was just as sharp. Sat down across from me like she was a lawyer and I was on trial. "You can't really mean this," she said. "You've made your point. Stop before it destroys everything." I stirred my tea. "Everything's already destroyed. You're tearing the family apart." I laughed. Dry, sharp. "No, I'm finally refusing to let them tear me apart." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Finally, she said, "You'll regret this." "Probably," I said. "But I'll regret staying a lot more." She left in a storm of perfume and indignation, and for once, I didn't feel small when the door slammed. Meanwhile, the posts kept multiplying. My parents had turned the house into a stage, performing victimhood for anyone who would watch. And it was working, at least until I decided to speak. I don't post much. I don't like it. But silence has its limits. I took their poolside selfie, the one where they toasted, finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen, and I set it next to their homeless victims photo. Then I wrote, "During this family holiday, my 14-year-old daughter collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. She was diagnosed with appendicitis. It could have been life-threatening. Not once did my parents or sister ask how she was. Not once did they visit. Instead, they posted this photo, mocking her as a drama queen. This house belongs to my daughter through my grandmother's will. I am her guardian. I will not allow people who laughed at her pain to keep living under her roof. That's the truth." And I hit post. The effect was immediate. The buzzing in my phone stopped. The comments dried up. The relatives who'd been shouting the loudest suddenly had nothing to say. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was clean. My parents didn't post again. The days dragged on, tense and bitter, but quieter. Cupboards still slammed, mutters still floated. But the performance was over. They knew it. By the end of the 30 days, they packed their things and left. No speeches, no posts, just boxes in a car and a door that closed behind them. I walked through the house after they were gone. The rooms felt strange without their noise, like the walls were exhaling for the first time. Upstairs, my daughter was stretched out on her bed, sketchbook in her lap. She looked up when I opened the door. "Are they really gone?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "They're gone." She smiled, tired but genuine. "It feels different already." It did. For the first time, the house wasn't theirs. It wasn't even mine. It was hers. And it was finally free. After they moved out, they didn't exactly land on their feet. They hauled their boxes over to my sister's place, crammed themselves in with her husband, and my daughter's cousins. From what I've heard, it was chaos from day one. Too many people, not enough space, and her husband wasn't thrilled about suddenly inheriting his in-laws. It didn't take long before the cracks showed. Arguments, slammed doors, snide comments. A few months later, my sister finally had enough and kicked them out too. And with that, whatever was left of their relationship went down the drain. Now, word is they're renting some tiny, cheap place on the far edge of town. A far cry from the house they once thought was theirs. And me? With them gone, life changed overnight. The house is peaceful. My daughter has space to heal, to laugh, to just be a teenager without being mocked for it. I even started renting out one of the spare rooms, which meant I could cut back my hours at work and actually spend evenings with her. For the first time in years, we're not just surviving, we're living. I haven't spoken to the rest of them, and I don't plan to. I just hear the updates through relatives and the occasional social media post. So tell me, do you think I went too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.